off. What's the name of the eight, the archetype of the eight, and who are some famous eights?
Well, I'll start with the archetype of the eight. So the eight is called active controller. They are the people that you think about, that they're strong, they take charge, they're decisive, they're self-assured, they can be confrontational, they can be magnetic in their high side,
Hmm.
and they're power oriented. So they're always going to be solving for who has the power, how do I get power, and how do I make things happen. So
Interesting.
those are the eight.
So I'm looking at a list of famous Enneagram 8s, and I'm kind of surprised by this one. At the top of the list, it says Mark Cuban, successful billionaire.
Huh.
Yeah, owned the Dallas Mavericks for a long time. I think he sold them. Maybe still owns them. I don't know. I don't keep up with him, but he seems to be a little bit softer personality delivery for an 8 versus the other 8s that I'm aware of in my life. Other ones, Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Socialist from Vermont. That's a surprise.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is not a surprise. That's a very strong example of the low side of an 8 in my opinion. Probably everybody's opinion. Barbara Walters, no surprise.
Oh.
Dr. Philip McGraw.
Oh,
Dr.
Dr.
Phil.
Phil.
Yeah. I could kind of see that. Kathy Bates. So those are some famous Enneagram 8s that people that I've been around recently enough that I think people could get a view of.
Mm. Interesting. And I think in a previous episode we talked about, the archetypes that we tend to love here in the States, and the eights was one of them, right? It was threes and eights.
3 7s and 8s. We are a 3 7 8 country.
3 7 8. Okay. And why is that?
Well, because we think about our foundation. It was visionary. It was something that hadn't been done before. That's 7. So it was founded on this idea of innovation, of vision, and that continued to be true. Think about all of some people say, oh, well, we could have just been the 13 colonies and been the United States and that would have stopped. But no, there was all of the westward expansion. There was all of, all that. So there's lots of 7 energy, but then we also, in order to make that 7 stick, there had to be success. And there was that controlling part that said, we got to take charge. We got to be strong. We got to be leaders. So it was seen that 8 energy was needed to make the country stay together and continue to be successful. So if I think about, I'd be interested to know the Enneagram types of our founding fathers, but
Right.
I'm thinking, when we think about Hamilton and everything we know about Hamilton from the play, we could definitely say he was probably a very strong 3. Success. I got to be successful. I got to be successful. I got to be successful. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes. Now he had his downfall, but then there was the 8 energy of we've got to be decisive. We've got to take charge. That was sort of the Washington. If you think about what it required for him to be able to lead the Continental Army and stay with it until they could defeat the British. So I don't know what their Enneagram types were, but I think there was a lot of that energy in the founding of our country that sort of seeded itself into the fabric of our being. And I think that if you look across then into industry and into corporate America, that's continued. The drive for innovation, the drive for newness, the drive for vision, coupled with take charge, get it done, be successful. Very different than think about the French culture where it's more about pleasure and art and beauty and
siesta.
Whole different sort of kind of connotation. So there we have it.
With eights, I think at one point I remember you telling me that eights were not in the nurturing sense, perhaps, but they were caretakers of others.
They can be caretakers when they are in their high side. They um, they want to exercise their power on behalf of other people.
Oh,
Like they
okay.
want
Okay.
to, um, because they see things that need to be done or that other people need to be protected. They can use their power in protection of others.
Hmm. So, what is it that eights? I mean, you said they value power, but what is that? I'm trying to think of the eights that I know personally, and I don't know that they would resonate with that. Talk to me about valuing power. Like, what's the benefit of power?
Okay, I can't reveal his name, but I know a that does value protecting people. This particular person, he saw a need to create a mentorship program through a network that I'm a part of, and he put it together, made it happen, and he didn't have any problem making the decision and doing what he thought was right. And um, if you were a sensitive person or you were a touchy feely person, he's not aware of that. In fact, that bothers him. He doesn't understand why people have that. You know, this is here. It needs to get done. It's the
Yeah.
right thing to do. You got time. You got money. Show up and help me. Help this need in society. And it's not what a lot of people are used to. Someone that's direct, that's that blunt,
Hmm.
and so I'm going to call that a very powerful, controlling, protective community. And this, I mean, I wish I could put him on stage so y'all could see him. It'd be an interesting study, but very successful guy. I'm inspired by him. I like him. Uh, Not always pleasant to be with, but he gets things done and they're done properly. And but not a lot of nurturing happens in the
Yeah.
process. It's more of a get it done now, get it done now. And if you got your feelings hurt, get over it. You know, we're getting this done, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
So here's
I don't know if y'all
interesting.
can I don't know if y'all can track that, but that's how I perceive it.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So here's an interesting note. Kamala Harris, type 8.
Mm.
Now
Let's
she has a little softer delivery than the person I was talking to. So one of her wings or one of her lines or something softens her delivery.
Hmm.
Oh, and I
So
think she is, to me, she's a more evolved 8 in
okay,
that
that's it.
when you talk about an evolved 8 that uses their power for the protection of others, for the, to look at, take charge, be strong, but on behalf of others. That's how what her history has said that she has done.
Yeah.
And so, and kind of that, going back to her original story, when she would come home and talk about the injustices and her mother would say, what are you going to do about it? Well, what
Yeah.
are you doing? So it's like that was bred into her. So it's going to be interesting because, I mean, as we go through the next few weeks, we're going to have these 2 8s battling it out. And what's interesting is I just heard this on a podcast this morning is what people always want in an election is 7 energy. They
Mm.
want vision, they want innovation, they want things to change. And so it really is going to be a job for either of them to convey to the people how they're going to use that 8 energy that they have, the power that they will have personally as type 8s and in the office to drive that 7 energy and ultimately the 3 success. So Now, what I would say is, and I don't know him personally, or I know neither one of them personally. From the outside, I would say Trump is an eight that's on the low end. He's not an evolved eight. He's seeking power for power's sake. He's seeking power for his own use. Like she seeks power, as I see it, for on behalf of others, for the benefit of others. So we'll see if they get that message across and where people line up.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this episode because as a 2, 8 is my stretch. And earlier you said that 8s can be confrontational. And as a 2, that to me is an inherently negative word. But I was thinking about like the root of the word is just to confront something, to face something,
Right.
which is not inherently negative.
No.
And the shadow of a 2 is that we're not going to do that for the sake of, making sure people are pleased and happy.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to piggyback on what Stephanie just said. One of the
Yeah.
qualities of eights is that they are influential. I'm going to read this to you. They have their own way of taking charge and influencing others, including within the larger organization. So this influential state is a key quality of being eight. Others that they are independent, protective, decisive, and assertive.
Protecting.
So I see that in both of our presidential candidates.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And protective, decisive, and assertive are all things that would be good things for me to grow into.
Well, some of this is I see in you true nature, protective. They are big-hearted and protect the people and things they care about. They fight against injustice. That's the protective nature of an eight.
Mm-hmm.
Decisive, they trust their gut and are quick to respond, willing to make decisions to move things forward. Kind of a risky thing. If you're a 9 like me, you want to think about it first.
Right.
You
want to ruminate on it.
Well, I've got an 8 wing, and whenever I'm impulsive, it gets me in trouble. And I forget that. So the 8s aren't afraid of being in trouble, I guess. And the assertive, I mean, no more assertive than Donald Trump. But the healthy assertiveness that obviously I think Kamala is more evolved than Donald, and she goes by it with a more nurturing nature, more comfortable nature for me as a 9 to experience.
Well, I was trying to put on the other hat. I was trying to say,
Okay.
Let me think about this. And I was thinking about, so if one of the hallmarks of an 8 is that they, and Amy, you were talking about confront, that they confront injustice because that's what so if that's the case, I would guess then that what is unjust to Donald Trump is different than what's unjust to some of the rest of us. How he defines what is the thing that he's fighting for is different of us would see it. So anyway, I was just trying to think, okay, if that's his nature, what's the thing that he's, confronting? What is he confronting?
Yeah. I'm thinking about an 8 that I know that started a whole nonprofit organization, fundraises for a demographic of people that this person does not belong to, but they are an oppressed, sort of invisible demographic. And when I think about that side of this person, I'm like, oh, I could totally see, like, I'm going to take action and I'm going to protect these people. And it is confrontational. This person's having to go in and have conversations that other people don't want to have because it's easier to leave unseen people unseen. They're unseen for a reason. So, like, that's the really positive. But then there's times when interpersonally I'm with the 8 and it feels so much Like as a 2, I'm like, could you care a little bit about what other people are thinking and feeling about you? Could you a little? So talk to me about what is the high side and the low side. We've sort of hinted at it, but let's call
Okay,
it out.
so the low side is that if you're a sensitive person, their direct confrontational manner can be offensive and put off and make you not want to work with them. However, in times of crisis, someone who stands up, takes charge, who has some wisdom and a definite opinion about what is right can be a safe harbor for people who are indecisive. Okay, I like what this guy's saying. He's in charge. I can trust him. I can support this person. So those are two different ways of experiencing innate. Stephanie, what do you think? How you about that?
Um, Sorry, say your question again. Oh, I
Like
lost y'all somehow.
what is the low side of the 8 and what is the high side of the 8? I mean, we talked about what are they defining as just and unjust?
Right.
And confrontational can be positive that we're confronting something, or it can be just combative for combative's sake, I guess. But what other ways of, like, draw me a vision of what's a low 8 and a high 8? I know you compared Trump and Harris and sort of said one was more evolved than the other, but could you give some more examples of that?
Okay, well, so think about the words that are labeled, how we label aids. Active controller. So in their low side, active controllers are micromanagers. They want
Oh,
to tell everybody exactly how to do everything. They sometimes can borrow some energy from that one type, with it be with perfectionist streak. Not necessarily that it's perfectionist, but that it's their way. It's kind of their way or the highway. Um,
got it.
on the low side, you're talking about people who have a lot of energy and who don't necessarily value or appreciate others who don't come with the same level of energy. Like
Mm,
for an A, you got to meet them head on. Like they don't value or respect people that don't meet them head on.
right.
And the high side of 8, the more evolved 8 is if you are in an argument with an 8, they want you to be full in. They're going to be full in. They want you to be full in. But then when it's over, they're likely not, they don't carry a grudge. They just move on to the next thing. Whereas somebody else would still be holding on to, well, they said this and they said that. And what about this? And for them, it's like, it's, it's one and done. So different sort of orientation in terms of the results. But they definitely want people who will match up to their energy and their intensity and their and they don't necessarily they have we talk about their wings, but this peacemaking, this let's build coordination and collaboration, not so much. That's a stretch for them. So
Okay, so the idealized self image for an 8 is I must be in control. I must be strong. I must not be controlled. So that is their idealized self image. The worldview is the world is a tough and unjust place in which only the strong can survive.
Oh, cool.
Good things happens to those who take control. Okay. The focus of attention, making sure that nobody is controlling them, paying attention to solutions and results, focusing their efforts on expanding their influence. And the motivation. This type stems from the motivational need to be strong and avoid feeling vulnerable. So their vulnerability is feeling vulnerable.
Mm. Yeah, I could see how 9 would be a much harder wing for them than 7.
Yeah.
Perspective
yeah,
taking and, trying to keep the peace. And that doesn't seem like an easy way to lean for an 8
yeah,
compared to big energy and adventure and let's do the next thing and the next thing and the next.
right. Well, and
So
I
they're,
think
go ahead. Go ahead,
I,
Stephen.
I was just thinking about, because this is an interesting, we're using these two people, Trump and Harris. And I'm thinking her early indications are that she is going to be inclusive in her cabinet. She's looking for people across the spectrum. She's supposedly going to put Republicans in her cabinet if she's elected. Trump is going heavy on the side of Trump's. You got to be loyal to Trump. And she's like, no, I want a variety of opinions around the table. I want to bring people with different thoughts. So she's already leaning into that 9 in terms of how she thinks about what's important. He's definitely leaning into strong 8. I just want people who are going to line up behind me and be with me in my stance.
Yeah.
So the vice for Enneagram 8s is lust. A
Mm.
no-nonsense approach combines with their grab-all-you-can attitude to fuel their vice of lust. The lust ensures that they do everything in excess, often going to extremes, and engaging life as a constant conquest.
That grab all you can energy just it's a little
Now,
close to
obviously, that's
home.
speaking to the low side of the 8,
Uh-huh.
but that gets it out there for people to just kind of think about and dwell
Yeah.
upon. So, what are 8s about?
Yeah.
So I recently had an opportunity to debrief an 8. And this woman was an African American woman who had risen high in the ranks of academia and self-described when there were positions open, people would not of her own seeking, people would come to her and say, you should do this, you should take this on, you should. And I said, why do you think that was? And she was like, well, it's just kind of like my nature, I get things done. And I said, yes. And given where you were, I think people must have thought that you were acting strongly on behalf of others. She said, oh, for sure. So for her, she was maybe a reluctant 8. She had all the 8 energy, but she didn't she wasn't necessarily going after power for power's sake, but because she had it and because it was inherent, and because I would say she was, some degree of evolved 8, that people naturally sought her out to take on roles that were, for other people, would have been more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
That she just saw as something I need to do. So
Yeah. Well, earlier you mentioned that, 8s are not going to have respect for people that can't keep up with them and show up for the fight, basically. I'm curious, besides, the people that can't keep up, what things or situations, what triggers an 8? If something happens, what should we be on the lookout for?
So let me put this in there before we talk more about that. Their fixation is vengeance.
Ooh.
They're highly sensitive to unfair actions or thoughts directed at them or others. The results in seeking revenge through anger and intimidation as a means to rebalance these wrongs. Okay. So triggers for 8s are being controlled or blindsided, others not being direct, others understanding their strengths, and injustice. Others underestimating their strengths, probably. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine if I was a controller, I wanted to be control, I wanted to have all the influence. If others are not being direct, that would feel slimy. They might just not be a direct person, but I think if I was an 8, it would feel maybe manipulative or like they're trying to cut my legs out from under me, sort of
Like, I just
thing.
don't have time for this. Tell me what you want so
Yeah.
we can get something done.
Yeah.
So the defense mechanism is denial.
Okay.
We see that in Trump a lot. Just deny, deny, deny. I hate to pick on Trump, but he's just the obvious unhealed 8, and I think we all know him. So
Well, and I
not to
was
be
thinking
picking on him.
with Kamala, everyone is commenting that she hasn't done off the cuff. She's done one interview and it wasn't very off the cuff, and so I think that might speak to her need to be in control of the conversation,
Yeah. What's interesting about eights also is that they have a blind spot. It can be a blind spot that they can often have a double standard about control, because
Oh,
they want to control everything, but they do not want to be controlled under any circumstances. So that sort of double standard can get them in trouble.
So that's one of their blind spots right there, is they want to control, but they don't want to be controlled. Another blind spot is many of them aren't self-aware of how overpowering their controlling and energy is. They don't, they just think everybody's like this, I'm getting things done, and they don't realize they're landing hard on other people.
yeah.
And that doesn't help.
Well, and I think that in a nutshell is the beauty of the Enneagram anyway. If you're thinking everybody on earth is going to look like an 8, be an 8, and they're not, you look at them and you think you're broken.
Yeah.
Rather than looking at them and being like, oh, you're being a 2. That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Got it. I'm gonna move on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it was, I mean, as we've talked about, because we're talking about this whole election thing, it was like before, when it was Joe Biden, Trump was trouncing him because he had this 8 energy, and Biden was a 6 by nature anyway, which is a lower energy number. You don't think about them as high energy. They're stabilizing, they're safe, they're they're grounded. And so that was very different energy wise from what you get with an 8, which is, and so
yeah, 8s seem to be much more of a force of nature.
Yeah.
The 3, 7s, and 8s all have that high energy component. So we talked a little bit about the wings already. Of course, our last Enneagram episode was about the 7s, and so people are probably familiar with that. With 9s, we haven't had a whole episode about it, but we've said, 9s are peacemakers. They keep multiple perspectives. Dad, you mentioned that they think on things a lot. Anything else we should know about the 9s and the 8 wing perspective in that regard?
Okay, so growth through the wings. So the 9 can help the 8 by slowing down and combine their strength with kindness. Going to take a lot of practice to do that, but just to slow down and be aware that those with them, working with them, are not necessarily going to move at the same fast pace as they are, or may be turned off by a direct, blunt. Some people need to process information a little bit. So the 9 can let them to be aware of the strengths and weaknesses of his team, and give them time to process. Also, not try to do everything all at once. Sometimes when you're working with an 8 as a boss, everything is a high priority. Mm-hmm. Everything has to get done ahead of time primarily, but a long time. Well, not everything is as important as other things, and some things can take a little back burner while you get something really important done. So that's what the 9 can do. The other wing is the 7. And the 7, 7s are about having fun and being excited and about what's next. So the 7 can help the 8 kind of lighten up and not be so serious and intense, and maybe have a softer or more playful vision about what's to come, particularly when you work on a project that's not do or die. So the 7th and the 9th can balance, I think together can help balance out the serious, intense, blunt, overpowering, over-controlling nature of the 8 and make them aware that that sometimes they're hard to receive by, I'm going to call them the softer, more touchy-feely numbers. Mm-hmm. I don't know another way to say that, but
yeah, I'd rather have an 8 in my corner than an 8 opposite me,
Yeah.
That's
opposing
true.
me.
That's
You
true.
know, so if I have a choice, I'd rather win the 8 over. And from a management perspective, if you have an 8 on your team, um, the best thing you could do is try to figure out what can you give them that they can be in charge of, and let them be in control of something totally. Like that will pacify them and make it easier for you. If you're trying to do, a lot of team stuff, that's great, but then they're going to need something that is sort of like theirs alone, whatever that
Mm.
is that they can do, because and utilize them in a way that puts them in a place where all that energy and all that decisive action can benefit you. And there's always some place that we need that 8 energy. So um, I think what you said in terms of perspective taking is that leaning into 9 so that they learn to get other voices, other perspectives. Um, and then I think the other thing for an 8 as a leaning into their 7 wing is being willing to have other experiences that where they may not be in control.
Mm.
In terms of what could happen, what's going to happen, um, leaning into that. And so sometimes that's a way, Stephen and I have laughed about 8s in a boat. Going rafting is a great exploration for an 8, because they don't, it's unlikely they're going to be controlling much. But
Mm-hmm.
learning through that experience, they could learn to sort of let go and, oh, this could be fun. And I could, I don't have to be in control every minute. But it's, you find most 8s. I mean, I was thinking about somebody who basically said that they were going on vacation with an 8 and everything was planned. Everything was like,
Mm.
we're going to do this tour at 9 o'clock, and then at 11 o'clock we're going to go this place for lunch, and at 1 o'clock we're going to do this tour. It's like everything was planned. And I think probably the reason why is because that's the way to maintain control. When you got it all planned out, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, talk to me about the stretch and the release for the 8. I know 2 is one of those numbers since I'm on that line.
Okay. So the release is the 2. And they can find some release in just being more vulnerable to others. They can calm down and realize uh, that they can relax and be aware of how their impact is on others, and if they can be a little more vulnerable instead of overpowering, they can make a connection with people and appear to be more human. And people can get to know them more personally. Above and beyond. Let's get this done now, and then when it's done, we're going on to the next thing.
Well, and I was thinking about, if the high side of 8 is that they're protective of others, the compassionate helper makes total sense for that to be aligned because it's other
yeah,
oriented. It's just coming at it from an emotional connection point of view rather than an action taking controlling point of view.
right.
Uh, so that was their release. So what's the stretch?
Okay,
5.
that's the 5. That's where you take a step back, kind of control your impulses and conserve your energy. Think something through a little bit before you engage your team and put them to work. Crack the whip. Just kind of conserve. Think it. Think about how am I impacting my team? How can I get them rather than them dragging them with yourself? Just kind of calm down.
Remind me what the 5 is called.
Quiet specialist.
Thank you.
Quiet. Think about it. And then they are, they go inside, they go quiet, they isolate, So going into quiet, going into isolation, think about what kind of balance that could bring to an 8 that's out there, out front, high energy, push, push, push.
And that's the stretch. So that's the growth, not the relax. That's the thing they would have to actively choose. It's not going to come naturally to them, I guess is what I'm saying.
So stretch can be both sides. It's the same side of one coin. So one side of that coin is stress. So when I have to be in this situation, it's stressful. On the other side of that coin is stretch, which is if I choose it, it will support me to grow in another direction. So
okay. So if you're in
stress and
stress,
stretch.
okay, if you're in stress and you're in that number, you're probably more likely to be in the shadow side of that number.
Right.
Rather than choosing it consciously, you're probably more likely to show up on the high side,
Yes.
especially if you're practicing.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the quiet specialist, I could totally see why that would be growth, you know.
Right. Choosing would be lead to growth. Being put there by circumstance will cause the 8s to just go,
Yeah. Go crazy. um so I feel like we've already hit
manipulative are words that come to mind.
Okay. Yeah. How do I get my power back?
Yeah.
So we've sort of said they're confrontational. They need to be more aware of how others experience them. What else should we know about 8s in relationship? And I guess the question I really want to get to is how does an 8 show love on a 1-to-1?
Oh, I would think an 8 would show love because remember, they're going to lean into, I'm going to take charge. I'm going to be decisive. I'm thinking about your car repair. An 8 would just say, I'll handle that.
Got it.
They're going to handle things for you. They're going to, might not be the way you want it. It might not turn out the way you want it, but they will have taken that off your plate. Here, let me take this off your plate. Let me take care of that for you. That's the protective nature. They're going to act to protect people that they care about. So just trying to think about any 8s that I know personally in my own life, how that shows up.
I'm not really in relationship with that many 8s. I know some, but I don't spend a lot of time with them. The way our lives are structured, I don't come upon them very much.
And some of the people that I know that, we laugh because when we did the Enneagram class at Unity, there wasn't an 8 in the room. Right. First of all, and they laugh in lots of Enneagram trainings that the 8s don't tend to show up. They only show up for Enneagram work when they're made to. It's like, so not unless they happen to be, an evolving 8. But and I don't know if it's just been our nature or the types of jobs that we've had, but yeah, I don't think of myself as being in a relationship with a lot of 8s. But at the same time, I really see their value. If it's, to me, I think about them like a wild horse. If you can get them tamed and saddled up and riding in the right direction, great. Yeah. But man, if they're wild. So.
I mean, the 8 that I'm in a relationship with, as a 2, as a compassionate helper, I look at them and I think, People just keep piling onto this person. Oh, 8 will handle it. 8's already got 60 things on their calendar, but we'll handle this. We'll just give this to the 8. And as a 2, I'm looking at it going, at some point, are you going to break? Like, at some point, this isn't going to serve you. You're doing a little too much, I think. But maybe they're not. Maybe they just have that much more energy. But I wonder about that sometimes. And I feel like that, for me, that relationship would be a much deeper relationship if the 8 was not so busy. Then I might feel like they had more time for me. And I'm not like offended by it, but I'm going, they're busy. They're not gonna chat for chatting's sake.
So the value for 8 is capacity, the ability to do all those things, having a sense of control and being direct and impactful. So they may be viewing that all that as value to them, that they're able to do so many things. Now, me as a 9, at some point in time, I get tired and I need to go be a sloth for a little while. Well, I think the 3s and the 8s have the opposite impact of the outcome of getting something done. I think they get fueled by it.
Yeah.
And I think they get better. And I think so that the value of an 8 is capacity.
The more they do, the more they do.
I know that's that way for 3s, because I've spoken with some 3s. I've not verified this with 8s, but I'm thinking that perhaps it's the same way.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. Well, what else should we know? I feel like we've covered.
Well, so we should talk about how do we show love to an 8?
Yeah. What do you have to say about that, then?
Well, I think you got to, kind of what I said before. If there are things that you can give to an 8 to do, to be in charge of, to be in control of, that's going to make them happier. If you know that you're going to be in relationship with an 8, plan it so that you can have that energy available to be fully present and sort of engaging and being willing to confront, have that confrontational capacity sort of at the ready, because that's what they're going to value. They love a good argument. They love a good, round of back and forth. So to bring yourself to that level matches their energy, so they're going to feel appreciated. They're going to feel
Also,
seen.
to not take anything they do personally.
Mm.
Don't be wounded or offended by anything they do or say. They're just trying to get things done. And if you appear wounded or feeling, they're going to see you as weak.
Yeah.
And they're going to look down upon you.
God, that's a tough dynamic.
Well, it is. I know I've had that. The person I referred to, earlier, he and I had that going back and forth. I'm not necessarily offended. I just have a different view of things and I want to slow it down. And we'll knock heads. And I've been in meetings where we're trying to win somebody over. He doesn't realize that he's being blunt and maybe even a little offensive. And if I'm feeling uncomfortable with it, I think the person that we're talking to may feel that way too. So maybe some way to make them aware that they're coming on a little bit stronger than they think, because I don't think they're aware.
Well, that brings up a good question. If you're in a position of needing to give an 8 some critical feedback or constructive criticism, however you want to call it, what advice or guidance would you give that person for preparing for that conversation?
Well, I think you have to, again, sort of match their energy, because they're not going to take it personally. Like they're not going to have their feelings in the same way. So I would say you're going to give them feedback that is about their actions, like, because that's what they value, taking action. So you're going to be more action oriented, be willing to be confrontational, be willing to be decisive, because they're going to hear it. If you're too soft, they will not hear it, and they won't absorb it. It won't What may mean for them.
Gotcha. So you have to be more direct probably than what might be in my nature anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the holy truth for the 8 is that the universe is fair and just, that over time, the universe is going to reward and punish people fairly based upon, I'm going to call it the law of karma. Uh, you know, that ultimately it's going to catch up, and then they don't have to step up and try to fix everything or be in control of everything. That perhaps they can step back and have a clearer vision of what's theirs to do and what's not to do, and let things just play out. That the universe is going to catch up with people for good or bad, whatever cause and effect they have at work in their life.
Hmm. That's interesting. I'm sitting here going, theologically speaking, I'm not sure I agree with the statement, but that's irrelevant.
Well, say something about that. I mean,
can you repeat it one more time?
Okay, so I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
If something comes up and you're an 8, rather than seeking vengeance and trying to make something just and fair in that moment and get involved and take control, maybe you can just sit back and realize that the universe is going to catch up with this guy. It's going to future events are going to come up in such a way where this person is punished by the universe or justly awarded by the universe. The 8 doesn't have to step in and take control of something and fix it.
Okay.
Is that a better way of saying that?
Yeah, that sits appropriately.
Okay.
Right. The holy idea is that over the course of time, all injustice is rooted out.
Yeah, over time, the universe is just and fair to everybody.
So with 3s, the achievement thing was, for a lot of 3s, it was competition. So with 8s, is a lot of that like desire for power and control at a subconscious level? Is it so that they're going to be rewarded by this karmic universe? Or is it just like physiologically they like the feeling of control?
Okay, so you're a 2.
Yeah.
The energy that you get back and forth by being your 2, to being the caretakers?
Compassionate.
You're not compassionate caretakers, whatever y'all are. I don't know. I can't think of it right now. But what you get by being a compassionate person, they get the same thing by being a fixer and a controller. They're getting the same thing, whatever that thing is.
Probably dopamine.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you get by being a caretaker, they get by fixing and being actively controlling things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm happy because 8 is my stretch. It's like my brain keeps going back and going, now what? It's like I keep trying to feel like I understand it rather than these are individual skills I have to practice. Like, I feel like I can understand, I need to be more direct, or, I need to take more action, or, I can understand it at a where are my growth opportunities level in a given situation. But to just understand the archetype, it's so different than my archetype that I'm having a hard time. I know it's a thing. I believe they're real. I just don't get it.
It's hard to get your head around it because what they do, to me, it appears to be offensive at sometimes. And how out of being offensive? Well, they don't think they're being offensive.
Right.
They're just taking charge.
They're just being.
They're just using their power.
Offering their, okay.
I would say to anyone who wants to figure out how to utilize the 8 energy is to say to yourself, what would it look like to be powerful in this situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's where an 8's naturally going. Now, they might not do it in a way that feels good to other people. So we can modify that. But is what moves people into 8 energy.
Yeah.
What would it look like to be powerful?
I think back to the forefathers example, and I at least, even though I don't get it, because I would never have done what the forefathers did, I can at least have the gratitude for the value that an eight brings. And back to the eight that I do know and I'm in a relationship with that has this whole nonprofit that has money coming in and they do all this work. Like that is a thing that didn't even exist until this eight showed up. And it has
Yeah.
affected thousands of lives in less than a decade, you know? So I can appreciate the potential and the possibility and the necessity of that archetype in our universe. Um, yeah, it's just more of a stretch for me, I think, than probably for some other numbers because of the stretch line.
Yeah. Well, think about what 5 going to 8. Woo!
Oh, because the five stretches eight. Yeah.
I mean, think about
Yeah.
the 5 to 8 line.
Okay, so I'm gonna see what y'all think of this statement. I'm gonna read these things from our text because sometimes things are written more directly than easier than I can put them in my own words. So
Sure.
the virtue of an eight is innocence. When type eights move into innocence, they become more open-hearted. In a state of innocence, they appreciate and experience the nuances of life without judgment or jaded experience,
Mm.
neutralizing their drive for excess and intense experience.
Mm.
That's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
First, I have to define in my own mind what is innocence. And I think if you're an eight and you're driven to be active and controlling and fix this thing, it may be hard to be innocent about something. I think you're driven to fix something,
Yeah.
make a choice, and get on it. So I would think you'd have to be in touch with uh, all your growth five, where you can discipline yourself to sit back and watch and hold back your judgment in the moment.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and think about the opposite of their core fear, which is helplessness or vulnerability.
Yeah,
It's like the low side of innocence would be seen as helplessness,
right.
Mm.
whereas the high side of innocence is um, belief in good, being,
Purity.
huh?
I would say
Yeah,
like purity.
purity. Yeah,
I think innocence and holy truth are kind of linked to each other.
Mm. Yeah.
I think the eighth is a challenge for me to talk about, basically because I just don't really have a relationship with any of them. When I know people who are living out that Enneagram number, it's easier for me to get my head around talking about them and understanding them.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, most eights aren't showing up for the Enneagram retreats.
That's yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think about as solid as I'm going to feel on an eight. Anything else that you all want to add or throw out there before we wrap up?
no, I will just say this. I think the next few weeks are going to be an interesting exposure of type 8s. And we're going to
Mhm.
see 8 on display. So let's be watching for it because I think we're going to see, some high side of 8, some low side of 8, and we're going to see, what shakes out.
Yeah. See how they utilize or not the wings and the stretch.
Yes, well, and also tomorrow there's a debate, and what do eights like? Confrontation, be
Yeah.
decisive, take charge, and we got 2 8s battling out on the stage.
That's a
So,
good point. That's going to be interesting.
so if we can look, I am now thinking one. Not only am I interested in the debate for a lot of reasons, but now I'm going to remember to look at this debate through the lens of Enneagram energy and type, and how's this showing up, and how much are they willing able to bring in 7 and 9 energy or not.
Yeah. Well, and this episode's going to air maybe even a week and a half, but it's going to air after the debate. So I would just encourage people, if you watch the debate and you noticed some 7 or 9 or 8 behavior, leave a comment. I'd love to know what people are observing and learning about this.
Well, and also I think that there'll be some more debates after this post because they said they're supposed to have 2 or 3.
Oh.
So there'll be some others to come. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, thank you for being here. We're almost to 9, and then we're going to have a, finale episode. We're almost wrapping up the Enneagram. It's been a journey.
So I will just say this, that a couple of people have approached me that have listened to the podcast and said, I don't know about that, about such and such, I don't know what you think about what you said about some type number that's gone before. So
Yeah.
I have encouraged them to put their comments or send me their comments. I said, we will have a finale session. So if there are things that you want to rebut or there are things that you want to add, please be sure that you let us know either in the comments section to the podcast, or if you know any of us and want to email us directly, please do so. We definitely want to be sure that we're given the whole picture.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say we're going to do that episode live, and anybody that wants to come on live and ask us questions, we welcome it.
Okay, great.
And they can email them in also, but if they can make it live and they have questions, let's do it. It's
Let's
helpful.
do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Bye, loves. Have a great week. We'll see you back for Enneagram 9. Leave us your comments about the debates or anything else you've noticed with the 2 8s on the ballots. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.